And just as we hit record, there's a machine outside.
Yeah. Hey,
Hi.
Noise is good when you're on a construction site.
Yes.
Welcome to the Viridian Studio Workshop. It's no longer an atelier. We thought it was too bougie. So
But it's our studio and we are open.
yes, we are.
We're open. If you want to come by, just reach out. Let us know. We'd love to host people, show everyone the cool stuff that we've been showing you in the podcast. Yeah. So we've been busy.
Really busy.
I'm going to give a quick site update. And then today we want to start digging into something cool that Matt did about a month ago now. God, it's been like about a month.
No,
3 weeks.
3 weeks ago. Yeah. And so this is going to be a little bit longer format than what we're used to. And we're not going to set a time limit on it. So hopefully it's going to be enough for you guys to keep on listening. If not, listen to the update and then click away.
But first, okay, site update. So there is noise happening today, which is exciting. So for our first set of homes, what we call sequence 1, in the middle of the site, we have Greenway Trail basements dug, mostly poured with concrete and walls and stuff, which is crazy to see. And right now they're digging the homes along Trillium Lane. There's a specific order that they have to dig in because we need enough, this gets technical, we need enough fill from certain areas to backfill and regrade the entire site. So we're digging in a specific order and then we'll be framing in a different order kind of based on the homes that have been sold so far. So don't be concerned if you know that you don't have a hole yet. That doesn't mean your home is last to be completed.
Talking to you, Kirk and Andrea.
we're on it. We're good. And we are hoping to start framing mid-August, which is very exciting with our panelized walls that they'll start bringing in.
Aren't we in mid-August? We're so close.
I don't know. We are really close to mid-August.
Yeah. As we like to say around here, we'll be starting on that particular thing on Monday. We're just not going to tell you which Monday. So, yeah. What else?
We are super close. Did we show on we showed on the last podcast sort of our essentials for what everything that comes in the home and when we're going to start inviting people out. We've had a couple design meetings. We're still finalizing some things, bathroom tile, but for the most part, we know our essentials. We know some of the options that you'll have, the limited options. And
really the last of this is really, again, we're chasing carbon, we're chasing chemicals. So there's products that, that we think are pretty good, but then we discover it's like, well, their carbon process is inferior to another product. Or we find something we're like, oh, that's awesome. It's called eco this or eco that. And then we look and it's like, PFAS, what? So yeah, like we just this week, another report was put out by some of our friends in the materials industry, and they found PFAS in 50% of paints out there on the market, including some that claim to be these eco-friendly paints. And again, things like water resistant or mold resistant or things like that, things that say that, they bead water. Those are kind of red flags that it's got some sort of sealant or something in it that repels water. And PFAS is freaking magic for that. That's why they use it in waterproofing for tents and jackets and all kinds of other stuff. And that's why it's so prevalent. But it never goes away. It's a forever chemical, and we want to try to eliminate that stuff. So we're working really, really hard.
And this is why I think it's taking us so long, because we have to dig into all of these things that the typical consumer might not have the bandwidth to do.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't have to be a chemist to pick the right stuff.
Yeah.
So we're doing that for everybody. So the one really exciting thing is I do think this is going to be easier the next time around. I'm reading this wonderful book on swarms and how we can figure out how we can learn from some of the things that they do. And one of the things I was reading about termites, a new termite colony takes 4 to 5 years to build a termite mound. Okay. But if you plow over that mound, it takes them only 90 days to rebuild that mound again. And so they have this like institutional knowledge. So what we hope to be doing is, yes, we're taking 47 years to build this project. But when we're done, you're gonna be able to do another one in 90 days.
I think that's true, though. I think that's
so. Yeah. So can I give my book report and say what I did over my summer vacation?
Yes. So Matt was somewhere super cool. Well, you were in Detroit, but you were doing
Detroit was super cool.
You were doing something super cool 3 weeks ago, and I haven't even gotten to debrief. All I know is you were down there like rubbing elbows with Al Gore and Al Roker and all the sustainability Als.
Can I share my screen here? What are we going to do? It's actually we're going to do the entire screen here, and you're going to see all kinds of other stuff that's up there. Where are we? So this is. I was at the TED Global Conference. The last time they put this conference on was in Edinburgh, Scotland.
And then it was in Detroit. That's so cool.
So this was a really big deal that it was in Detroit this year. This was the Global TED Conference. This is the only TED conference that is a single topic. And the TED organization decided that climate crisis needed its own separate conference. Just having Al Gore up there doing a TED Talk every few years was not enough.
Yeah.
And that they really needed to bring together all of the climate leaders, all of the thinkers from around the world who are doing things into a room together, 800 of us. And I was just like wildly just humbled and privileged to be one of those invited. There were people from literally every country on planet Earth. There was a handful of local people. We got to be one of them. And I say we because we did. So in the morning, the way the TED conferences work is that they do, we were at the Fillmore Theater, which was stunningly beautiful. We got to listen to all the TED Talks in the morning, and they have 2 sessions of talks. Break for lunch, and in the afternoon we do you bring all these different breakout groups together. So they have these things called breakthrough sessions and then leaders quest sessions. And so Viridian got to be one of those leaders quest sessions. So on the Thursday of the conference, we all came. They brought out a TED delegation on a shuttle and came out. We talked about what we were doing and the impact that this is having on sustainable development. And these were climate leaders and developers. One of the largest developers in the UK was here, leaders of some nonprofits, some financial institutions. There were people from Ghana, from New Zealand, from Australia, crazy places like Asheville, North Carolina, Seattle, Washington. It was really extraordinary, and getting to engage. It's
a really inspiring group.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, it's like all of the people that are giving the TED Talks up on the stage are also participants in the conference. So you get to see people like Al Gore walking around with his little plate of food, looking for friends at cocktail parties. So it was really exciting. So I'm going to share with you guys a couple of slides. This is what Matt did on his summer vacation. So this was this wonderful woman that I met, Nicole Kellner. Look her up, follow her on Twitter, get her books. She's making all kinds of books. And this was something I found the other day of hers that really kind of impacted why the TED conference was so meaningful to me personally, and one of the greatest experiences that I've had in my career working with climate crisis. It was so amazing to be in this room with 800 people, and you're seeing people who were people like Al Gore, people like Cristina Figueres, who is the head of the United Nations climate climate advisor to the Pope, all of these wonderful people working together. And every single person there at some point had, including when the delegation came out here, I think we all had tears in our eyes talking about how kind of sometimes overwhelming the work can be.
I feel like I'm in the orange and the red right now, just based on things that have happened like literally here in Ann Arbor that it feels unprecedented. 2 Wednesdays in a row sitting in the studio, we had sirens go off because of crazy thunderstorms and winds, and trees came down and power outages and it's scary. Yeah.
And at the same time, and this is, again, it's like, and you're constantly questioning. I see my daughter every day and she's asking me, Daddy, why is the siren going off? Daddy, why is the sky orange?
Yeah.
My 9-year-old, and you just have to ask yourself, am I doing enough? And there are some days where you do feel like the entire world is in that red zone, like, oh crap, this is all not going to end well.
Yeah.
And then we celebrate our wins together, like the IRA. But overall, the overwhelming feeling and why we're able to do this work. And this was like the big theme of the conference, when you're sitting down with these people who are just, you admire so much. and they talk about how they love what they do, and what keeps them going is the work, is diving back into it. And there was one guy, Nathan, who was a climate scientist, and he was at this dinner with Christina Figueres, and we were at this table together, and we're talking about you dive into your work to get away from all this. But his work is learning about all the awful things that are happening to the planet. And he talked about how miserable he was at cocktail parties, because what do you do for work? Like he can't tell people what he does because it depresses the shit out of them. So what he does is he goes and he finds projects all over the world, in Africa, in South America, and finds the people doing the most compelling, compassionate, and collaborative work that he can, and gives them the tools that they need, and inspires them to keep working harder. And he has a nonprofit now that he works with, and he's doing less research, but in order to fill his soul so that he can keep doing the work. So Nicole, thank you for this little drawing and all the other wonderful things that you do. But that's Paul.
Is that the same shirt you're wearing?
It is the same shirt that I'm wearing. And there it is, right behind me is Paul Hawkins, the Ecology of Commerce, one of my climate heroes. He is the person who inspired Ray Anderson from Interface Carpets to start their Mission Zero. And Mission Zero is what we called my house when we were turning it to net zero. This was 2 rows in front of me at one of the sessions. That's Al Gore's head. So I think if you zoom in really close, I don't know, we could zoom in there and see what he's texting. He wasn't texting me. And this was the TED delegation out here at the studio that we're in right now. Just wonderful, extraordinary people there. There's Al with his little plate of food. This was at the dinner for I forgot what we called it, but I have a slide of this later. But basically, it was the dinner with Christina Figueres, just talking about optimism and how do we stay optimistic, and why it is so essential to doing our work. But the stuff that's not so optimistic. This was Isabella Kirkland. This is one of the most powerful things to me, was this artist who gave this talk, and I can't wait till TED posts this and to share this with everyone. But go to her website, Isabella Kirkland, and what she does is she paints the things that are being destroyed or lost on planet Earth.
Oh, wow. And
she talked about all of these solutions that we're talking about, and then in our quest for zero carbon, we cannot ignore biodiversity. And that's something I think we're really proud of here, is the work we're doing at Viridian. It's not just about giving you guys a net zero energy home. It's about making sure that we don't have too many anthropogenic sounds that humans are causing that are preventing insects from breeding and birds from breeding. We met with somebody last week, Heidi.
You did,
about bird safe windows, right? And how many birds are dying from clear glass. There's nothing in evolutionary history of 3.8 billion years that animals have the opportunity to adapt to that is the equivalent of glass. There's nothing like that in nature. And here we are with sheer wall glass and giant windows and things, and birds are dying at a pretty high rate from glass in around the world. So Isabella Kirkland really talked about these things that we're losing. And one of the things I remember learning, I think it was from one of Paul Hawkins' books. And the thing that I really struggle with actually is I can deal with loss. When my father died, things are born and things die, and that comes with the package. But I'm pretty sure this was Paul Hawkins who said this, but he talked about the death of birth. And that's what extinction is, right? Extinction is the death of birth.
Yeah.
Things that are no longer born.
Right.
I got a problem with that. And that I can't deal with. And that's why Isabella Kirkland was like so powerful in showing some of her art, and everything that you see in the species, from the plants to the insects to the fauna, are now extinct. And also, talking about the urgency of the work that we have to do, 7.5 years left to really halve our global climate emissions. So basically by 2030, every neighborhood in America needs to be built like Viridian, right?
And how long is it taking?
Yeah.
Viridian?
Yeah.
7 years?
7 years, right? So far.
Yeah.
So far. All right. We'll be 9 years in, almost a full decade to complete this neighborhood from concept to completion.
Yeah.
And that's too slow. And we need to move faster. So there's people all over the world really doing this. And this is this woman, Hong Huang, who in the beginning of the conference, they actually played her audition pitch for her TED talk, because she was supposed to give one of the talks there and wasn't able to because she was arrested and detained just before the conference started in Vietnam. And she's the 5th climate activist this year in Vietnam to be arrested for tax evasion, right? Which is kind of this BS thing that they're rounding people up who are really speaking out against some of the devastation that's happening there. And so we, she talked in this pitch that in countries like Vietnam, the people aren't allowed to march or protest, and you get jailed for speaking out about it. And so the 800 of us who were there, we had a moment of silence, and that was really kind of why we were there, was to show this love and empathy that we have for the planet and for each other, and that's how we dig into the work that we do. So yeah, Al Gore got freaking fired up about what the CEOs were doing. There was, Exxon spent 50% more on biofuel ads than it did on biofuels. Like, I think they even had a Super Bowl ad. These CEOs seem to think they've got, one of them actually said, they've got a license to produce oil and gas forever if they can come up with carbon capture. But the thing is like, why the hell are we spending all of this energy on carbon capture when we could produce more energy more efficiently and cheaper with renewable energies? It makes no sense whatsoever. But the danger is that they double down on this.
Yeah, it's the status quo that we know is so hard. To break, to get away from, which is exactly what needs to happen.
So as
people don't like change. We have to change.
But we don't like bad change. I think we need to. We're seeing the consequences of all the stuff now. And Al Gore even said, he said, denial ain't just a river in Egypt, and despair ain't just another tire in the trunk. And but the good news was, he says that 90% of all new energy right now is coming from renewables. Right.
That's good.
So yes. And my most, the most optimistic things to me comes from one of my superheroes, Michael Mann, climate scientist, and he talks about that if we stop emissions, if we get to zero emissions, we stop polluting that biosphere that you see in that picture there, that little troposphere there, stop using it as our sewer plant, then global heating will stop. If you stop putting all the crap that is causing temperatures to rise up in the atmosphere, then temperatures stop to rise. And that's what the science is showing us that. So that's really awesome. And Al Gore closed on this little gem, which talked about the will to act is a renewable resource. I like that. And I like that quite a bit. And this was, again, my super duper hero. If I could be a climate superhero, I'd be Paul Hawkins. He really talked about this notion that, that nature is being dismembered. Yeah. Right. We're taking it apart piece by piece. And he talked a lot, and a lot of the speakers there were farmers. People talked about soil health, biodiversity, and he quoted somebody, and I wish I could remember who it was, who talked about that when we're standing on the ground, we're standing on the roof of another world. That's wow. And I thought that was incredibly powerful. Yeah. So everything that we do, everything that we touch, the light we put into the air, the sounds that we put into the air, the shovels that we put into the soil, all have an impact in multiple dimensions: below the ground, above the ground, sideways, upways, diagonal ways, like a Willy Wonka elevator. We really need to be paying attention to everything that way. But one of the greatest things he talks about, I've always loved, but now, is that, he talks a lot about localization in his talk. That localization is the foundation of regeneration, from forests to favelas, right? And this is, again, what we're trying to do here at Veridian, right? Is connect those dots. He talks about that when a system is hurt in nature, that the parts have to connect to themselves, reconnect to themselves, right? And so that's what's happened here, is that we've centralized everything. Our food systems, the global grain supply is owned by 3 companies around the world. We get our energy, our electricity from one power supply company here. We get our water from the municipality, period. That's it. Even though more rainfall falls on most of our homes here in Ann Arbor every single day than we could possibly use in a single year. So, you know, connecting this adjacency gives you more compassion to other human beings, other creatures. It makes you more resilient. And he talks a lot about, you know, reciprocity. And he says, so to reverse climate crisis, we have to, we need reciprocity. And the idea of reciprocity is giving more than you're taking back. And that's what a healthy, complex system does. And that's what we need to be doing for each other. This was also super powerful, and we'll put the link to a lot of this stuff. This was someone who didn't attend the conference, but was the first one that they posted after the conference, was Maxine Kamchenko, who is the CEO of the Ukrainian National Oil or National Energy Company there. And he gave this powerful talk that I encourage you to go. It's already posted. He said that his company, the utility company, has been attacked more than 10,000 times since the beginning of the war. Hundreds of his employees have been killed. Every single nation on Earth, he talks about, is now, in a very unsustainable way, highly dependent on heavily centralized and vulnerable energy systems. Right?
Yeah.
And talked about the need, and what we're doing here at Veridian is to decentralize that, right? Bring the energy where it's used, to the rooftop of every single person's home. So what he called the green counteroffensive, he says that's their most powerful tool in this war with Russia, and how they can repel what's happening with the Russian invasion, is the green counteroffensive. And he says because of the green counteroffensive, Ukraine has kind of forced Europe to end its reliance on dirty fuel from Russia, right? Or the war itself was actually caused them to end that. But what they're doing now is that Ukraine believes that they can be a leader and an exporter of clean energy to the European Union. And so they are, as we speak, in this green counteroffensive, building just wind turbine after wind turbine after wind turbine. And even talked about like the footprint of these turbines and how small they are for the amount of energy that they generate. It's one thing for the Russians to come and bomb a power plant, or God forbid a nuclear power plant, right? But you can't bomb a solar field. You can't bomb wind turbines. And if it's decentralized, maybe you can get one transformer, but you can't. It's really hard to get all of them.
Yeah.
And so you get this much more resilient thing. So they were out there, and he showed pictures of this, you know, building these wind farms while missiles are flying overhead, and how many times they had to go and seek shelter in bomb shelters just to get this thing built. Wow. And this one that he was really proud of, he talked about that farm now fuels over 200,000 Ukrainian homes, which was really incredibly cool. And this, again, just Christina Figueres is what gives me and so many people hope. So the session, this dinner that we had with her, was about clear-eyed optimism, and it's not just about rainbows and unicorns optimism. It's about clear-eyed optimism, and that's very, very different. And she talked about anger and frustration and how that's an okay thing because it inspires us. But there's a difference between that and toxic anger, toxic frustration. And she actually had, we talk about
toxic frustration.
Toxic frustration. We talk about that.
Not helpful.
We talk about that a lot, right? In our day-to-day work. And she started this dinner with tears in her eyes that we can't fail.
Yeah.
right? And we talk about that quite a bit at Veridian. We cannot fail. So how do we keep moving forward when we come to work in the mornings? Sometimes there's crews not here. Where is everybody? Why aren't they here? Why aren't we moving faster?
Responsibility without authority.
Right, exactly.
It's hard.
And why is the sky orange?
Yeah.
When my daughter wakes up and she has this really cute thing she does where she, with all these different color skies that we've been getting, every morning she wakes up and she walks to the window with Kelly or me, and says, and tells us what color ice cream flavors the sky is. So she'll call it, lavender gray, or she'll say, strawberry orange sky, or she comes up with these amazing colors. And we know that that's from forest fires in Canada.
Right.
And so how do you do that? And she said that we have a responsibility to be optimistic because there is absolutely no victory without optimism. And we don't just need any kind of optimism, we need transformational optimism, right? And this is when she cried. She says, we have no right to give up or let up. And so what that means is we really have to have this like radical collaboration like we're trying to do. And it gets frustrating for us because we feel like we're not collaborating enough.
Right.
And we really want people to be talking to us. People have been, it's hard. People have been critical sometimes of Veridian. Sometimes justifiably so. And we know those things that we can't do, that we're not doing enough. But rather than criticizing all the time the work that people are doing, really kind of reaching out and saying, hey, do you agree that we could be doing more? Why aren't you doing more? And having those conversations and collaborating in a way that humans are not really used to.
But I think it's twofold too, because it's like, you're always going to have those critics. It's like you say you're going to do these 10 great things that could be transformational if other people in the industry would adopt them. But then it's always that like, it's the optimism versus this like negativity where it's like, okay, you're doing it fine. I don't get, why aren't you doing this? And it's like,
yeah. And we really have to talk about the things that we're doing well.
Yeah.
But
acknowledge the things that we
things.
can't do and the reasons why we can't do them, because you do need that transformational shift to do a lot of these things. But like, if people would just replicate the things that we are doing in development,
we'd be making huge steps forwards.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. And again, and she closed on this too. It's like, if you gain, look, what do you have to lose, right? If you think that everything is hopeless, that the world is going to hell and there's nothing else we can do, and we pass these crazy tipping points, which by the way are overblown. There are tipping points. There are things that could happen. We are not there yet. Frankly, the science is pretty crystal clear. We're not close to those tipping points really happening. But even if you believe that, even if you've gotten to this level of, not just being an extra tire in the trunk of despair, that if we gain, we gain everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If we lose nothing, because, well, if you think we've already failed, then what have you got to lose?
Yeah.
So we have this obligation to keep moving forward with this clear-eyed optimism. And then Jonathan,
Missed your last slide.
It will be. We're going to talk more because there's so many more and so much more to talk about. And I think these are really good. Hopefully you guys like this, and let's I think we should start having more of these dialogues.
Yeah.
Maybe and start inviting some guests and things, and have people like Jonathan Foley or other people come in and sit down and have a chat with us. But Jonathan Foley is head of Project Drawdown, which was founded by Paul Hawkins, among others. And he really is the solutions guy, right? And he talks about 80% of the climate solutions that we have right now, available right now, not crazy stuff off in the future, is cheaper than all the other shit that we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? It is cheaper to own an induction cooktop. It is cheaper to own a heat pump. It's cheaper to own an electric vehicle. It's cheaper to have an electric bike.
I know. And it's just, people, it's the marketing and the advertising, I
Mhm.
think, that like are impacting a lot of this, but also just in the availability.
Yeah.
Like my heat pump, I don't know if I've shared my like whole heat pump water heater thing. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I was like the same, like I couldn't get anybody to install it. And that's the other problem.
Oh, heat pumps don't work in Michigan,
Right. Heat pumps don't work. It's going to be $6,000. Like it's not that much more efficient than just like a regular electric.
No,
like,
lies.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really hard as a consumer just to get somebody. I used our Viridian plumber because thank God, but and it was an emergency situation. I had to wait 2 months for this heat pump water heater.
Right.
So I think
and that's the other thing too. Like 80% of appliance purchases in America are made under duress.
Yeah.
Right. And I told you that. That's why you said I was like, get it now.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the thing to break.
Right.
Because if it broke, you might have needed to spend $6,000 from that guy who's basically cheating you.
Yeah. So it's like we have the solutions, but we don't necessarily have the workforce that's trained to be knowledgeable, or just even consumers that are trained to be like, we need to somehow make this, it's the status quo. It's a problem of the status quo.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a shift.
Yeah. And that was one of his big points that I've got here up in the screen. He says that, like, we know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. You knew you needed to have a heat pump water heater. That's not the problem. We know we have the solutions. We know what to do. But what he was saying is we need a science of how.
Yes.
How do we get there? How do we get these people to really understand that these heat pump hot water heaters are better?
Yeah.
So and then the longer that we wait to get these solutions, the less impact they have. So he talked about, he made the comparison between like the time value of money and the time value of solutions, of carbon, the time value of carbon, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. But if we had planted it 20 years ago, or the one we plant today is better than the one we plant 20 years from now, because it will be sequestering carbon during that time. And so the earlier we do it, the more actions we take now. Every little one has more impact the sooner we do them, because they can start acting now. So, that kind of answers the question for folks. It's like, well, I've got this plan to decarbonize my home by 2030. If you have the means, if you are a wealthy homeowner and you are not doing these things, do them.
Yeah.
Do them.
At least in Ann Arbor, the city's Office of Sustainability and Innovation is starting a program that's sort of like a concierge program to help homeowners, because it's so confusing to navigate. Like, I want solar and a battery because of all of the power outages. I don't want to buy a gas generator like everyone on next door is talking about, because that is just not the way we should be going. But like, the path to get there, and it's figuring out Michigan Safe.
The science of how, right?
The science of how has been like stifling me, so I just don't do it.
Yeah.
But
so
I need to do it.
The city's going to give that to us.
Yeah, so the city's going to help be able to be really helpful in navigating all of these like new technologies that are not even that new, but like new.
Right.
Status quo.
Yeah, right. No, and that's it. That was kind of what he closed on, right? We do have all this really cool, badass technology coming. There are better heat pumps coming every day. Yeah. Geothermal is getting better. Induction cooktops rock, but the controls are getting better. Make them more user friendly. Cars are getting better. Cars are getting cheaper. Bikes are getting cheaper. Bike lanes are going in. All of these things are happening. But do we wait? Right? Do we wait to get that e-bike until every single road is connected, or do we go ahead and get one now? Do we wait to buy that electric vehicle? Do we wait to buy the any of these other things, or do we do them now? So he says, no, we do them now. Right now is better than new. Time is better than tech. So the quicker that we get this stuff implemented. So on that note, I think that's a good. What else? There's so many more things. We're gonna have all kinds of show notes and everything else on here.
Yep.
We're gonna share with you more. But I didn't even get through like a tenth of the talks that were done at TED. So we'll
talk more later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will.
All right. This was long.
Hopefully
you guys enjoyed it.
And if you listened this far,
thank you.
Let us know what you thought.
Yeah.
Give us a ping.
Stop by.
Stop by the studio. I think we're going to start doing some more of these like longer format things, and really start doing real podcasts, start sharing, not just with the folks at Viridian, but the folks outside, because I think as we learned from the TED conference, we really do have something to offer, and people are wildly excited, and we are making other people optimistic by the work that we're doing. Cool. And that drives us every single day. So with outrage and optimism, with healthy outrage not toxic outrage, and with incredible hope. We wish you guys a fabulous week. And even if the skies are giving you orange sunsets, enjoy the orange sunsets. There's something beautiful about them, and it can be simultaneously beautiful, even though you know they're coming from something horrific.
Yeah.
So enjoy that beauty. Love you guys, and we'll see you next week.